Hey, you're Cody's wife, aren't you? The sudden call from my mother-in-law, Jessica, left me momentarily confused. What are you talking about? Cody's wife is Melissa, his affair partner, isn't she? Jessica's voice over the phone trembled with anxiety and desperation. Please, can you help us? We're really in trouble. The very people who once cast me aside to choose Melissa were now begging for my help. Hiding my icy resolve, I hung up the phone. My name is Alice. I met my husband, Cody, after joining the company run by his parents. I had started working there right after graduating from university. I wasn't particularly interested in construction, but I had been looking for a stable job in my hometown and decided to work at their company. Though I don't consider myself especially attractive, I've always enjoyed cooking and sewing, and I take pride in being good at household tasks. Every day, I made it a habit to bring my own homemade sandwiches to work. One day, Cody noticed my sandwich and struck up a conversation. That looks delicious. Did you make it yourself? Yes, I always make my own, I replied, a little embarrassed. Cody smiled warmly. Man, I wish I could have sandwiches like that. My mom never makes anything, so it's a hassle whenever I have to head out to the field. Hearing him joke about it made me pause for a moment. We weren't particularly close, but as co-workers, I thought it might be nice to do something helpful for him. Would you like me to make some for you? The words slipped out before I realized it. I was startled by what I'd just said, and Cody seemed equally surprised as he looked at me. Really? You'd do that? Sure. It must be hard when you're out at the site. If it's okay with you, I'll make some. And that's how I started making sandwiches for Cody. At first, I was nervous, but seeing him enjoy them so much every day soon made the act of making them a pleasure for me as well. Today's sandwich was amazing, like always. Alice, you're such a great cook. His words warmed my heart little by little. Every time he praised my sandwiches, I felt something special beginning to grow inside me. As the days went by, we naturally grew closer. I really like women who are as homey as you, Alice. When he said that, I was a little surprised. I had always thought Cody was someone supported by everyone around him, including his family. I didn't expect to hear that from you. It's surprising. No, I mean it. I've never had someone who puts in so much effort for me like you do, Alice. His words made my heart race. Perhaps this was the first time I'd ever felt so needed and appreciated by someone. Soon, we began dating, and after just 6 months, we were married. Even after our wedding, I continued making sandwiches for Cody every day. Each time he expressed his gratitude, it filled me with happiness. However, alongside that happiness, I began to sense something was off. Day by day, it became taken for granted that I would manage everything at home. Cody's words of appreciation started to sound more like a habit than genuine feelings. Still, I threw myself into household tasks for his sake. But as time went on, our peaceful and stable days began to unravel. His mother, Jessica, who lived with us, started treating me coldly more often. This behavior became even worse after Melissa began visiting frequently. Melissa was Cody's childhood friend. Her parents also owned a construction company, and Jessica adored Melissa for as long as anyone could remember. Beautiful and outgoing, Melissa would often drop by the office or the house, spreading her charm, and then leaving with a smile. Hello. Melissa entered the office one day, her cheerful voice filling the room. While I was organizing some documents, she immediately started chatting with Cody. Cody, how are you? You look busy. Is there anything I can help with? Cody smiled at her as he replied, Thanks, but I'm fine. You've already been a big help. And besides, I have Alice now. I see. But Alice must be so busy, right? Office work seems so hard. I don't think I could ever handle it. Melissa glanced at me briefly as she said that. Her words rubbed me the wrong way, but I stayed silent and continued my work. Her visits to our house became more frequent. While Jessica treated me coldly, Melissa and Jessica seemed to enjoy each other's company. Jessica, how are you? Should I help out again? She would step into the living room and talk to Jessica in a familiar tone, as though they were family. Apparently, she had been like this since childhood. Jessica would light up whenever she saw Melissa. Oh, Melissa, you're always so thoughtful. Unlike Alice. What? I could only let the words wash over me as I wiped dishes in the kitchen. You're right. Alice can be a little clumsy at times, but that's what makes her cute, don't you think? Melissa smiled at me, but I could sense the contempt behind her seemingly sweet expression. I wish someone like you had become Cody's wife instead. Jessica's exaggerated sigh made me feel a little sad, but I kept my hands moving. Oh, Jessica, I'm just a childhood friend. Alice is doing her best, you know. But look at her, Jessica said, gesturing toward me. It takes her so long just to put away a few dishes. I tried my best not to react, staying silent as I continued my task. Oh, I know, Alice, next time I'll teach you a new recipe. Maybe it'll help you enjoy cooking more. Thank you, but I'm fine. I can manage on my own. Oh, really? Well, if you ever need help, just let me know. I'm good at helping people, after all. Melissa kept visiting frequently after that, laughing and chatting with Jessica while treating me with subtle condescension. Jessica, I'll come by again soon. Let's have another long chat next time. As she said her goodbyes, Melissa threw me a brief glance before leaving. That glance left me feeling sad again, but I quietly returned to my chores. Melissa would have made a better wife. Jessica's words echoed heavily in my heart, making me feel as though my place in this home was slowly disappearing. The feeling that something was off began to grow after Melissa started visiting more often. At first, I convinced myself it was only natural since they were childhood friends, but gradually, that sense of unease grew stronger. Eventually, my suspicions turned into certainty. One afternoon, Cody abruptly announced he was going out for dinner. It wasn't like him to do that. And he left right after Melissa had been over. Something about his behavior felt off, so I decided to follow him. Cody, where are you going today? Just a work-related meeting. I might be late, so don't wait up for me. His words only deepened my suspicions. If it were really for work, he would have told me earlier. Besides, this had been happening more often lately, Cody leaving right after Melissa visited. Quietly, I decided to follow him. His destination wasn't a restaurant for meetings, but a small, hidden cafe. A place like this for a work meeting? That's definitely a lie. Peering through the glass window, I saw Cody and Melissa sitting together, laughing and talking as if they had no worries in the world. I quietly stepped into the cafe. Cody, are you sure it's okay not to tell Alice? Melissa asked, sounding concerned. It's fine. Don't worry about Alice. She doesn't matter. Honestly, I'd rather have you take care of the house from now on. The moment I heard those words, a sharp pain pierced my chest. I wanted to turn and leave immediately, but my body was frozen in place. Without ordering anything, I quietly left a cafe. Cody returned home after a while, his face showing no hint of guilt. I confronted him immediately. Cody, what's going on? I saw you at the cafe with Melissa. I heard everything. My voice trembled as I spoke. For a moment, his expression darkened, but it quickly turned cold. So you found out. Not like I was trying to hide it. Melissa and I have been seeing each other for a long time." I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. "Why? Why would you say something like that?" "We're married." My voice shook, but his response was icy. "I'm tired of you, Alice. It's more fun being with Melissa. She's cute, and when I'm with her, I don't feel weighed down like I do with you." At that moment, I was utterly crushed. It was bad enough to discover their affair, but his cold words cut even deeper. The days that followed were nothing short of hell. Jessica became even colder toward me, and whenever Melissa visited, she treated her like the real wife. "Alice, let me be honest with you," Jessica said one day. "I've thought from the beginning that Melissa should have been Cody's wife." "What do you mean?" I asked. "There's no point hiding it anymore. Melissa and Cody are practically married already. And we, as a family, are fine with it. You don't belong in this house." Her words shattered me. Not only was Jessica openly endorsing the affair, but she was also telling me I didn't belong in the family. From that day on, my place in the house vanished entirely. At the dining table, all the talk was about Melissa, as if I didn't even exist. The isolation within the family became unbearable. Then the day finally came. "Alice, I've had enough. I can't do this anymore. Get out." His words pierced me like a dagger. I couldn't stop the tears from falling. "Get out? Where am I supposed to go?" "Go back to your parents' place. You don't belong here anymore. The savings are all ours now. I've been managing everything, and the house is in my name. You have nothing left." The reality hit me like a ton of bricks. Everything I had saved before marriage, the life we had built together, it was all being taken from me. Even my savings. We combined everything when we got married. It's all under my name now, so it's mine. We're done. Just leave already. He turned his back on me, his tone colder than ever. I was left speechless, unable to do anything but stand there. In the end, I divorced him and returned to my parents' house. I had no other choice. As I left the house, I glanced back and saw Cody and Melissa laughing together, looking happy as ever. "Are you done moving out?" Cody asked. "You're still here. Go back to your parents already," she added with disdain. Having lost my home, my savings, and everything I had built, I stood frozen, tears streaming down my face. Although I returned to my father's house, the void in my heart remained unfilled. My father, who had raised me alone after my mother passed away when I was young, listened to my story and offered his understanding. Yet, each day, I became more acutely aware of all I had lost. Life at that house began to feel like a distant dream. Every time I recalled the image of Melissa, Jessica, and Cody happily spending time together, my chest tightened with pain. Even back at my father's home, I found no peace of mind. Cody and Melissa continued to mock me relentlessly. Nearly every day, I received humiliating messages from Melissa. "Still moping around at your father's place? Cody has already decided to marry me. You're no longer needed." Her messages seemed to drip with a sneering smile I could almost see through the screen. "You're useless now. Forget about us, and go start a new life with someone else." Cody's cold attitude had not changed a bit. It was as if they were enjoying my downfall, taking pleasure in my suffering. Why are they going so far just to hurt me? Tears streamed down my face as I stared at yet another message from Melissa on my smartphone. Eventually, I heard the news that Cody and Melissa had officially married. I don't even want to know about them anymore. Everything felt meaningless. The only solace in my life was the quiet days spent with my father. He had always been a reserved man who didn't say much, but during my most painful moments, He stayed by my side without a word. That silent support was the greatest comfort I had. But one day, while I was preparing dinner, my father suddenly collapsed. I rushed him to the hospital. But the diagnosis was grim. It was already too late. After a few weeks of battling his illness, he passed away, leaving me behind. Dad, why? Please don't leave me alone. I broke down beside his hospital bed, overwhelmed with grief. With my father gone, I was truly alone. After his funeral, I began the process of settling his estate. To my surprise, I discovered that my father, without ever mentioning it, had left behind a significant amount of wealth. He had owned a vast piece of land, 2 apartment buildings, and a substantial amount of cash. I was shocked but also deeply moved, realizing that he had prepared all of this for me. Dad, you thought of me so much, even without saying anything. I gazed at the inheritance documents as tears quietly streamed down my face, my heart aching with gratitude for his kindness. For a while, I lived in a haze of sadness, feeling utterly aimless, but gradually, a new feeling began to take root within me. I couldn't stay like this forever. I started to think about how I could use what my father had left me to rebuild my life. What should I do with this land and these apartments? How can I manage them properly? I sat alone in the large countryside house my father had left me, lost in thought. Though unsure of how to rebuild my life, I knew I had to face each challenge one step at a time. Around that time, Cody contacted me again. His message was as cold as ever, showing no interest in my life. Instead, he proudly shared news of his marriage to Melissa. We're married now. You're nothing to me anymore. Melissa is my partner from now on. Hearing those words, I felt nothing. In the past, such words might have hurt me deeply, but not anymore. It felt as though my father's legacy was now giving me the strength to stand tall. Hearing those words, I felt nothing. Thanks for the unnecessary update. We're divorced, and I'm living my own life now. With that, I began managing the land and apartment buildings my father had left me. At first, I had no idea what I was doing, and often felt overwhelmed. But slowly, I learned and gained the confidence to take this new step forward. Dad, I'm going to do this right. I'll take care of the land and the apartments you entrusted to me. I silently made this promise to him as I began moving toward my future. Even as Cody and Melissa continued to mock me and send degrading messages, their words no longer hurt me. With my father's inheritance as my foundation, I regained control of my life and found the strength to move forward. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I was no longer alone. With my father's memory and his legacy supporting me, I resolved to live boldly. Sometime after starting my new life managing the properties, I received an unexpected call from a real estate agent. The agent was adamant about acquiring a piece of land I owned. I'm sorry to bother you, but we're very interested in the land you own. That area is undergoing rapid development as a new residential district, and there are plans to extend the nearby highway. The land is incredibly valuable to us, and we'd greatly appreciate your consideration. As soon as I heard the agent's words, I couldn't help but think of my father. He had cherished this land during his lifetime, and I couldn't let it go so easily. I'm sorry, but this land is a precious inheritance from my father. It holds deep sentimental value for me, and I have no intention of selling it. I firmly rejected their offer, but the real estate agent didn't give up. On the contrary, they repeatedly called and even visited me, desperate to secure the property. Could you reconsider? If you're willing to sell, we're prepared to offer a very high price. Opportunities to receive this kind of payment doesn't come often. No matter how much you offer, I won't sell this land. It's something my father entrusted to me, and it's filled with memories. There's no point in continuing this discussion. I stood my ground firmly, refusing to budge. Despite my clear refusal, they persisted. Their determination to acquire the land seemed unshakable. The calls from the real estate agent continued, but I refused to give in. I couldn't easily let go of the land filled with memories of my father. Strangely, the value of the land began to rise sharply. As its worth increased, I found myself wondering, was there a way to not only preserve my father's legacy but also make better use of it? Determined to find out, I decided to study real estate management seriously. If I can honor what my father left me by using it in a way that shapes my future, I'll protect this land and make the most of it. With that resolve, I picked up books on real estate and enrolled in online courses. At first, the concepts were difficult to grasp, and I often felt frustrated. But the more I learned, the more fascinating it became. With each piece of knowledge I gained, my confidence grew. Meanwhile, the value of the land continued to climb, and I was able to venture into new real estate investments. The apartment buildings were already providing stable income, but the additional revenue from real estate investments brought me even greater financial stability. Dad, is this okay? I'm making good use of what you left me. I silently spoke to my father in my heart, slowly regaining my confidence. One day, out of nowhere, Cody messaged me. His words were just as cold as ever, a repetition of his usual spiteful remarks. Still stuck in that countryside. Your life's already over. But I was different now. I was no longer the person I once was. His words couldn't faze me anymore, because I had found confidence in myself. If anyone's life is over, it's yours. I'm walking my own path now. I'm living in a way that honors what my father left me. Why did he even leave you? Your dad wasn't rich or anything, was he? That's not for you to know. I sent that message back and made a promise to myself. I would never let his words affect me again. The land, the apartments, and the inheritance my father left behind weren't just assets. They were a foundation of support that allowed me to rebuild my life on my terms. Without being bound by the past, I focused on my future and took a bold new step forward. What my father left me was more than material wealth. It was the strength to stand back up, a source of resilience that fueled my drive to live fully again. From now on, I wouldn't let anyone control me. With unwavering confidence, I resolved to continue building my new life. Then one day, I began receiving more provocative messages. They came frequently, always from Cody. At first, I thought he was either trying to harass me or provoke me for some petty reason. But something about his behavior seemed off, and eventually, the truth began to reveal itself. Feeling a little too proud of yourself lately? Isn't it time you sold that land already? That message came out of nowhere. He must have found out somehow that I had inherited my father's assets. I wished he would stop making baseless accusations. But something about his tone didn't sit right with me. Proud of myself? I haven't done anything. I'm just protecting what my father left me, I calmly replied to Cody. However, his responses became increasingly provocative. Without that land, we could have done much better. Don't you realize you're the one standing in the way? His messages grew more unsettling, clearly intended to shake me. Around the same time, I happened to hear a piece of news. Cody's company was being exposed for repeated fraudulent construction practices. Reports surfaced about falsified earthquake-resistant standards and shoddy construction. Eventually, the government launched an investigation. The moment I learned this, everything clicked. The reason Cody had been contacting me so persistently was that the land I owned was a crucial piece of their development plans. Without my land, their project could not move forward. He had been desperately trying to acquire it, so that's what this was all about. My land was essential for their plan. I understood now why Cody was so desperate, but his company's problems didn't stop there. In their attempts to meet unrealistic deadlines, Cody's company had cut corners repeatedly, leading to a cascade of issues. Complaints from residents were mounting, and the company's reputation was crumbling rapidly. His obsession with my land stemmed from the fact that without the project's success, their financial situation would deteriorate even further. On the surface, Cody and Melissa's relationship appeared fine, but as the company's troubles worsened, cracks began to show in their relationship as well. Why did it have to come to this? It's all your fault. If you'd just sell the land. That's not true. It's the result of your reckless construction practices, isn't it? Alice, please, help me. If you sell the land, we can still turn things around. Help you. After everything you've done to me. Have you forgotten? I know I was wrong. I was confused back then. But now we really need that land. Please, I'm begging you. His voice trembled, but I felt no sympathy. I've told you many times already I'm not selling that land. And now you're asking for my help. This has nothing to do with me anymore. I hung up the phone. But that wasn't the end of it. Even Melissa's father, who had initially supported Cody's company as part of the family, quickly severed ties when the scandal broke. Melissa's father didn't want his own reputation in the industry to be tarnished. Although they had appeared to have a strong bond publicly, their relationship had been purely transactional. Once the situation became public, Melissa's father distanced himself from Cody and his family. Cody and his in-laws found themselves completely isolated. The company teetered on the brink of collapse, abandoned by Melissa's family, with no one left to help him. Why do we have to go through this? He muttered, but I felt nothing for him anymore. This was entirely his responsibility. In the end, this is the result of your own actions. The harm you've caused others is coming back to you. Although those words crossed my mind, I didn't say them. He was now just a part of my past, and there was no need to say anything. Afterward, I focused even more on studying real estate, managing the land and apartments. What happened to Cody was no longer my concern. I was carving out a new future with my own strength. The world of lies that Cody and Melissa had built collapsed, and my life slowly began to fill with hope once again. A year after my divorce from Cody, I suddenly received a call from Jessica. When her name appeared on my phone screen, a slight unease stirred in my chest. What could she possibly want now? Curious, I answered the call. Hey Alice, Cody's wife. That's you, right? Jessica's voice trembled with anxiety and desperation. What on earth was she talking about? Surprised by her sudden words, I quickly responded with calm. What are you talking about? I have nothing to do with you anymore. Cody's wife is Melissa, isn't it? I responded somewhat coldly. Although I was surprised by Jessica's attitude, it didn't shake me as it once would have. No, that's not it. You have income, don't you? Please, help me. Jessica's voice was strained. In that moment, I could intuitively sense how desperate they had become. The scandal surrounding Cody's company, with all the illegal activities and financial troubles, was evidently starting to have a serious impact on their lives. Help you? You're the ones who abandoned me, remember? Who was it that said Melissa was more suited to be Cody's wife than me? And now, you want help, I answered firmly. I never imagined the day would come when Jessica would ask me for help, but it was clear now that they were facing the consequences of their own actions. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I'm really sorry for what I said. But right now, I'm truly desperate. Please, can you help me? Jessica apologized for her past attitude and asked for my help. Her voice shook, sounding like someone entirely different from the confident person she had been before. But I had no intention of letting them manipulate me again. Do you have any idea how much I suffered? Jessica, you abandoned me and only cared about Melissa, didn't you? And now you come to me for help. I maintained my calm, but the anger I had held inside for so long started to surface. The pain from the past briefly resurfaced, but it was in the past now. I was determined to protect myself. For a moment, Jessica seemed to be at a loss for words. I could feel her silence through the phone, as if she wanted to say something. I know, but right now, we really don't have any money. With everything that happened with the company, we don't know what to do. She continued to plead with a trembling voice, but I remained unmoved. Her words were filled with regret for the cruel behavior of the past, but that alone no longer moved my heart. No matter what happens to your company, it's none of my concern. You abandoned me. No matter how things turn out, asking for my help now is just too convenient for you. The fact that they had abandoned me and treated me coldly would never disappear. And now, the consequences of their actions were right in front of them. Please, Alice, we know we were wrong. But for Cody's sake, please. No matter what happened to them now, I had no intention of getting involved. For Cody's sake, you all threw me out for Cody, didn't you? No matter what you say now, I won't help. We're strangers now. Don't involve me in your life. I could hear the confusion in Jessica's voice on the other end of the line, and I knew she was at a loss for words. After a moment of silence, I could hear her quiet sobs, but still, I remained unmoved. You're right. I was wrong. I'm sorry, truly. She murmured these words before the call ended quietly. After the phone call ended, I stared at the receiver. For a moment, I would no longer be bound by the past, rather than feeling that I had taken my revenge. It was the moment I truly realized I had taken back my own life. This is the end, I muttered softly to myself as I placed the phone down. Then I turned forward again and began walking. From now on, I would carve my own path in life, without relying on anyone, without being manipulated by anyone. It wasn't long after I had started seriously studying real estate when I heard that Cody had lost everything. He had been abandoned by Melissa and was now completely isolated. The company's illegal activities were widely reported, and it was driven into a state where recovery was impossible. His in-laws, too, had lost their reputation, and it seemed unlikely they would recover either financially or socially. So, this is how it ended. That was all I felt when I heard about Cody. No emotions stirred within me. In fact, I found myself calmly accepting that he had fallen to rock bottom. Cody had always relied on his parents, so bouncing back on his own was going to be tough. He had lost everything, his job, his life, and now it seemed like he regretted kicking me out. I even heard that he had finally realized how important I was to him. But for me, it was already too late. Even if I think back to that time, I don't feel anything anymore. I muttered this to myself as I picked up a stack of real estate documents from the desk. Now, my life has completely changed. With the income from real estate and the inheritance left by my father, I started purchasing new properties. By managing them, I was able to secure a stable income. The plan to build a new house in the countryside is also progressing. Building my ideal home on the land my father left me has become one of the joys of my life. In the midst of all this, I met a man through my studies in real estate. He, too, worked in the real estate industry, and like me, he was striving to build a future. We naturally became drawn to each other, and before we knew it, we became engaged. The struggles of the past, now I can laugh and talk about them. I never imagined a day would come when I could feel this way. But now I've completely recovered from the wounds of the past and am walking a new path in life. Then one day, I received a message from Cody out of the blue. It was an apology and a plea to get back together. Alice, I was wrong. Won't you give us another chance? When I saw that message, I couldn't help but smile. What was he saying now? I quickly closed the message. There was no need to reply to him. No matter how much he regretted it, I wasn't going back to the past. It's too late, Cody. I've already moved on. I murmured this in my heart as I refocused on my work. The past with Cody was now a distant memory. I had overcome everything and was moving forward to the next stage. The construction of my new home was progressing smoothly, and I was excited about the life ahead with my fiancé. After ignoring Cody's message, I felt even more positive. My resolve to move forward in life and build my future on my own terms grew stronger. Dad, I'm doing my best. I'm cherishing what you left me and moving forward. I spoke to my father in my heart as I smiled and looked toward the future. All the struggles of the past were now distant memories. What awaited me from here on out was hope and new challenges.
Mickey got into an accident and got hurt. We're heading to the hospital in an ambulance right now.
Vincent, my husband, called me suddenly, his voice frantic. He was supposed to be at work at this time.
What? Is it true that he got hurt in an accident? Yes, it's true. He had a bike accident. Mickey keeps mumbling, "Come quick, Mom," over and over.
My daughter, Michelle, was in the middle of summer vacation and had gone out on her bike to play with friends after having lunch.
What? No way, Michelle. Michelle? Wait. Oh.
The moment I mentioned Michelle's name, Vincent's previously agitated voice suddenly stopped. Then, unnaturally calm, he said, "Forget what I just said. Bye." And hung up without waiting for a reply. I was worried about Vincent's strange behavior, but more than that, I could only think about Michelle, who was supposedly hurt. I rushed out the door without even changing clothes. At that moment, I collided head-on with someone coming towards me from outside. Ouch! Mom, if you rush like that, you'll cause an accident. Good thing I was wearing my helmet. There stood Michelle, looking exactly as she did before she left. My name is Amelia Ingram, a 42-year-old working mother. After becoming a professional, I started to feel a bit out of shape, so I joined a tennis club for working adults, where I later met my husband, Vincent. I can't remember who spoke first, but before we knew it, we were dating. 1 year after we met.
Will you marry me? Yes, of course.
His pure, almost boyish confession of love with his star-like shining eyes completely won my heart. Nearly a year after our marriage, I gave birth to our first daughter, Michelle.
Look, Mickey, Dad's home.
Vincent was so doting on Michelle that it almost made me roll my eyes. Watching him, I felt warm inside, reassured that marrying him was the right decision. When Michelle entered kindergarten, her friendly nature quickly earned her friends, and she would tell us every day about what happened there.
That girl is Michaela. She's very kind.
That's wonderful. I hope you two become even closer.
Michaela, huh? So she's Mickey too?
Vincent said, laughing with a sense of affinity.
Stop it. If you keep calling them both that, you'll get confused and embarrass yourself.
That would be funny if it happened. Vincent laughed heartily. Since our children were close friends, we quickly became friendly with Michaela's parents.
Thank you for always looking after our Michaela. Let's keep being friends.
Michaela's parents, the Stewarts, were both cheerful and easygoing. After about half a year, we frequently visited each other's homes and enjoyed barbecues together during holidays. Michaela's mom, Hilda, had been in the tennis club in school and had even competed at the national level. Hilda had been curious ever since she heard Vincent's name.
I thought the name sounded familiar. I always admired you. Meeting Mr. Ingram like this is a miracle.
Hilda's eyes sparkled as she spoke. During my school days, I wasn't involved in sports at all, so I didn't know this, but apparently, Vincent was quite a famous figure in the college tennis community. Vincent, feeling good about being reminded of his past glory.
How about this weekend?
He said, mimicking a racket swing. I'd love to see Hilda play tennis. Having completely opened up to Hilda, I said that. Hilda's husband, Hilton, declined because he had to work.
Well, you should go and enjoy yourself.
He encouraged Hilda. Thus, we started inviting her to play tennis every weekend. Hilda, having participated in national tournaments, kept up with Vincent's agile movements, unlike me who was just building my stamina. Unable to keep up with their movements at all, I soon ran out of breath and rested alone on the bench. When Vincent won with a powerful smash.
That's our Vincent. Fantastic.
Hilda ran over and pressed a chilled drink from the cooler box to Vincent's cheek. Vincent let out a surprised cold, and Hilda laughed amusedly. An elderly couple passing by on their walk commented,
Look at that. What a lovely couple.
Yes, it reminds me of our younger days. They looked at Vincent and Hilda, reminiscing about their youth. Now that it was mentioned, Vincent and Hilda could indeed be mistaken for a married couple by strangers. Thinking this, I felt a bit gloomy. Whether he knew my feelings or not, Vincent started going out to play tennis with Hilda whenever they could find time, even without me. Did you go out with Hilda again? At least you could have invited me. Seeing Vincent's tennis bag after he came home sweating, I realized they had gone out together again. I thought you might be tired from housework and your part-time job. I was trying to be considerate. I tried to believe this was his way of being kind. Soon, Vincent and Hilda not only played tennis but also often went shopping together and took turns picking up the kids from kindergarten. Don't you think you're going out with Hilda too much lately? When I confronted Vincent, he showed me a small package containing jewelry.
I was planning to give this to you on your birthday. I asked Hilda for advice on what would make you happy.
He smiled innocently. Before we got married, Vincent often came up with surprise plans for me. Knowing he still loved me, I felt relieved. In the fall, the preschool performance at our kids' kindergarten took place.
It's Mickey's first performance. We need to capture every moment.
Vincent took a day off, and for the first time in a while, we went to the kindergarten together. At the Stewart family's, Hilton showed up briefly and then tried to leave quickly. Is it work? That must be tough. I casually remarked, to which Hilton, looking uneasy. Well, yes, kind of. He replied ambiguously and left in a hurry.
Sorry about that. He's been having a hard time at work lately and is always in a bad mood.
She apologized on his behalf. The preschool performance ended without incident, but from around this time, Hilton started avoiding interactions with us. We seem to be getting avoided by Hilton. I expressed my concern. You're overthinking it. He's probably just swamped with work, she said with a wry smile. Hilton, who used to be so friendly, had suddenly become distant, and I felt a bit lonely, but she didn't seem to mind. We continued to interact with the Stewart family, and when Michelle started elementary school, she suddenly wanted a bicycle. Michaela is getting one too. Michelle pleaded persistently, tugging on my apron, and Vincent, who was listening,
You should just get her a bike.
folded his newspaper and said, Really? You usually say not to give in to the kids' wants so easily.
Well, it's inconvenient for her not to have one to go out with her friends. I'll buy her one.
If you say so. I was a bit surprised, but decided to trust Vincent's kindness towards Michelle. So on Sunday, Vincent and Michelle went to Walmart to buy a bicycle. When they returned, Michelle was wearing a brand new pink helmet and kept looking at herself in the mirror.
Mom, I got the same one as Michaela. Her mom said this one suited me.
Was Hilda there too? Well, yes, I guess so. Vincent nodded awkwardly. By the time Michelle was in second grade, it became routine for her and Michaela to go out on their bikes.
Do your homework first. I will when I get back.
That was our daily parent-child conversation. When summer vacation started, we couldn't go anywhere due to Vincent's work, but
at least I can play with Michaela a lot.
Michelle was happy, so it wasn't a problem. After lunch, Michelle would ride her bike without doing any summer homework. One evening, I received an urgent call from Vincent.
Mickey's been in an accident and injured. She's in an ambulance on the way to the hospital. What? An accident? Is it true? Yes, it's true. She crashed while riding her bike. Mickey is delirious in the ambulance, repeating "Come quickly, Mom" over and over. No way, Michelle. Michelle? Wait, oh.
Vincent's voice, which had been full of urgency, suddenly fell silent. Then, unnaturally calm, he said, Forget what I said. Goodbye. And hung up abruptly without waiting for my response. Vincent's behavior bothered me, but all I could think about was Michelle's injury. I rushed out the door without even changing my clothes. At that moment, I collided headfirst with someone running towards me. Ouch! Mom, if you rush like that, you'll get into an accident. Good thing I'm wearing a helmet. There was Michelle, looking just the same as before she left.
Michelle, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere?
I asked rapidly while checking her all over, as she had fallen and hit her bottom. Michelle frowned, looking ticklish. I'm fine. What about you, Mom? Did you get hurt? She was worried about me instead.
Vincent called and said you had a bike accident. What? I don't know anything about that.
She looked back at me with innocent eyes, clearly unaware of the situation, her surprise evident.
We're heading to the hospital by ambulance now. I just got a call from Dad.
That's a lie. I'm fine. I'm not hurt at all, see? Michelle brushed the sand off her pants and spun around to show she was uninjured. Indeed, Michelle's body showed no signs of injury. Was it a mistake, and had I just been dreaming? But when I checked my phone's call history, I saw that Vincent had definitely called me 10 minutes ago. I remembered he had said something strange before hanging up, just forget about it. I called Vincent back, and after a few rings, he answered with a heavy voice, yes. Vincent, Michelle is safe. She just got home and doesn't seem hurt at all. What was that call about?
It was nothing. Just forget it.
Vincent tried to laugh it off. But in the background, I could hear many people bustling around.
Check for any brain abnormalities. Hurry!
Yes, doctor. It was clearly a tense situation. Is it really nothing? Because I hear.
It's just TV. Our company has a trend of watching medical dramas while working. We're busy here. I'll hang up now.
Vincent hung up before I could say anything. Too busy to take a call, but with time to watch TV dramas? I tried calling back several times, but Vincent had turned off his phone. It got completely dark, and as I was thinking about reheating the soup for dinner, Vincent called. Sorry, I won't be able to come home tonight. Work isn't finished. I see. I nodded and hung up, then reheated the soup. The next day, Michelle came home from her rabbit care duty at school with a gloomy expression. Usually, she'd go out to ride her bike immediately. Today at school, the teacher told me. Michelle said that Michaela had a bike accident and was taken to the hospital. However, the teacher didn't know any details about her injuries. A bike accident yesterday. Vincent's strange phone call came back to my mind. There was no way it was unrelated to that call. I said goodbye to Michaela yesterday. It happened after that. Recalling the previous day, Michelle started crying. I want to visit Michaela in the hospital. Since Michelle wanted to visit, I quickly got ready and we headed to the hospital where Michaela was admitted. Michelle. You came. Michaela looked surprisingly well, which made me sigh in relief. Her mother, Hilda, was sitting next to her bed.
Amelia, Michelle. Thank you for coming.
But Hilda quickly looked away from me for some reason. I was so shocked when I heard she was rushed to the hospital after a bike accident. According to Hilda, Michaela had a slight fracture in her arm, and she wouldn't be in the hospital for long. I'm sorry for the trouble Vincent caused. At that moment, I responded. Huh? Why was Vincent's name mentioned here? Sure, the day before, I got a strange call from Vincent about Michelle's bike accident, but Vincent kept saying it was a mistake. Why is Vincent's name coming up? Does he have something to do with the accident? I asked, and this time Hilda looked surprised.
What? Didn't you hear about Michaela's accident from him?
I explained that the information about Michaela's accident came from Michelle's school teacher. Then Hilda looked obviously uncomfortable and muttered.
Oh no!
There was definitely something behind that call. I couldn't help but be convinced. Can you tell me what happened yesterday? I asked calmly, with a smile. Hilda stammered, unable to give a proper answer. Well, Michelle's mom. Ignoring the adult tension, Michaela began talking about the accident. According to Michaela, she got into the accident right after parting ways with Michelle. Michaela saw Hilda and Vincent holding hands from a distance and tried to call out to them.
Whoa! Michaela! Stop it!
Hilda tried to interrupt Michaela's testimony in a panic. Go on. I'd like to hear more from Michaela. Michaela smiled cutely and said, okay, and continued. Just as she was about to call out to them, she unfortunately collided with a truck coming out from a side road. The truck had slowed down, but Michaela's light body and bicycle were easily thrown off. Fortunately, she landed on soft soil instead of concrete, and since she was wearing a helmet, she avoided serious injury. Hilda and Vincent were too far away to notice her accident. Later, Hilda turned a corner and disappeared from sight after parting ways with Vincent. Vincent, who came towards Michaela, finally noticed the accident.
Michelle's dad stayed with me at the hospital.
Michaela recalled happily. That's good. I glanced at Hilda, who still had her head down and wouldn't look up. What's wrong, Hilda? You don't look well. Nothing. Hilda replied, her lips trembling. I should get going to prepare dinner, so I'll be leaving now.
Michelle, see you.
Bye, Michaela. Michaela kept smiling, but Hilda remained silent until Michelle and I left the hospital room. Michaela's mom didn't seem well. She's probably sleep-deprived from taking care of Michaela. I brushed off the question and gently patted Michelle's head. When we got home, Vincent was already there.
You're home early today.
Yeah. It seems that Hilda has already reported on the interactions in the hospital room that day. He seemed unsettled, like he was trying hard to think of something to say.
I visited Michaela in the hospital today.
Really? How is she doing?
Oh. I never mentioned that Michaela was in the hospital because of an accident. She could be sick, you know.
Yeah, just had a feeling. Vincent was clearly agitated. Well, all right. I reported on Michaela's injury. But more importantly, it seems like you know something, doesn't it?
I don't know. What could you possibly mean?
I pressed him about the phone call from the previous day. That was just a joke. I just wanted to surprise you. But I never imagined Michaela would actually end up in the hospital the same day. It's a lesson not to joke about such things. Now, shower time. I was so busy yesterday that I didn't even have time to take a shower. Vincent said all he could and then quickly disappeared into the shower room, almost as if to escape. I could hear him humming to the sound of the water running in the shower. All right, now's my chance. I picked up Vincent's mobile phone from the table and opened the messaging app. If my suspicions were correct, there should be some kind of clue. Vincent should be in frequent contact with Hilda, but there wasn't a single message between them in the usual messaging app. Finding this strange, I decided to check his free email app just in case. The app was locked, but I remembered something Michelle had told me before.
Michaela's mom's birthday is just one day apart from Grandpa's.
I tried entering my dad's birthday, shifted by one day, and the lock was easily bypassed. There were numerous exchanges with Hilda. Did he think using a free email address would prevent him from getting caught? The emails were filled with love words so passionate that I blushed just reading them. I heard the shower stop and quickly put his mobile phone back in its original place. Vincent came out of the bathroom, still humming, and checked his phone for any new emails.
Are you expecting an email from someone?
No, it's just work. Vincent instinctively tried to hide his phone behind his back, unaware that it was already too late. For the next few days, we didn't mention Michaela's accident at all. We continued with light greetings and everyday conversations, so on the surface, we might have seemed like a normal couple. However, I hadn't forgiven Vincent and Hilda's relationship. In fact, my true feelings were quite the opposite. I wanted to sever ties with Vincent and leave this house as soon as possible. The only reason I maintained this facade was for Michelle's sake. Michelle, with her sharp intuition even as a child, had sensed something was wrong when I discovered the affair between Vincent and Hilda. "What's wrong, Mom? Are you feeling unwell?" she asked with concern. I didn't want to burden my kind-hearted Michelle with this, but I knew I would have to deal with it eventually. With a determined heart, I invited the Stewarts over to our house. This is my one and only chance, I said to myself, trying to muster the courage every time I felt like running away while looking in the mirror. On that day, both Vincent and Hilda's husband, Hilton, had the day off from work. I didn't want Michelle to overhear such an adult conversation, but fortunately, she had rabbit care duty that day. According to Hilton, Michaela's injury had completely healed.
She should be able to leave the hospital in 2 or 3 days.
That's good to hear. I felt a sense of relief hearing this good news from Hilton. I wanted to finish the conversation before Michelle came home from school, so I got straight to the point.
Hilda, since when have you been in a relationship with Vincent? Whoa, what are you talking about all of a sudden?
That's right, Amelia. There's no way Vincent and I are involved in that way. Both Vincent and Hilda tried to laugh it off. I swiftly grabbed Vincent's phone from the corner of the table, skillfully opened his emails, and began reading the exchanges between him and Hilda.
This is undeniable proof. Can you explain this? You! When did you? It's incredibly rude to snoop through someone else's phone without permission. Exactly. Even between spouses, looking through each other's phones without permission is a violation of privacy.
Both of them ignored their own actions and solely blamed me.
So, you admit the relationship?
When I said that, they fell silent. No matter what they said, the fact of their affair wouldn't change. They both seemed to realize this. After a while of silence, Hilton, who had been quiet until then, stood up.
There is more evidence.
He scattered dozens of photos on the table from his bag.
What is this?
Hilda panicked and started to collect the photos in a hurry, but I managed to snatch a few from her before she could. The photos showed Vincent and Hilda entering and exiting a hotel. In all the photos, they were wearing different outfits. This meant the photos were taken on different days. They had not met just once, but had been frequently meeting at the hotel.
Have we been followed all this time?
Hilda glared at Hilton with a devilish expression.
I'm busy with work. There's no way.
He calmly denied it. In reality, Hilton had noticed their relationship earlier than I did. He had secretly hired an investigator to look into them without Hilda knowing. Even after the affair became obvious, Hilton couldn't pursue it because the kids were close friends, and in case of divorce, custody usually favored the mother.
But Amelia, when you asked me to come with Hilda today, I knew this day had finally come.
Hilton realized he couldn't overlook the affair any longer, so he brought the investigator's report and evidence photos with him. Vincent and Hilda, unable to deny it any longer, finally admitted their affair. They had bonded over tennis and started contacting each other even when I wasn't around. Initially, it was just a relationship between parents with kids, without any deeper feelings. However, over time, romantic feelings developed between them. I can't explain it well, but I couldn't get her out of my mind. I feel the same way, Vincent. Their embarrassing statements, without a hint of shame, made me question if they were really parents. Even on the day Michaela had her accident, they were on their way back from the hotel, trying to avoid being seen by acquaintances. Hilda had turned the corner first, unaware of Michaela's presence. She was probably basking in the excitement of spending time with Vincent. When Vincent noticed Michaela reaching out, calling, "Mom, Mom," he hurried over to her. A truck driver was already there, and an ambulance had been called. When the ambulance arrived and they climbed in, Michaela once again said, "Mom, come quickly," so feeling sorry for her, Vincent took out his mobile phone. However, in his agitated state, Vincent mistakenly called me instead of Michaela's mother, Hilda. The moment I said Michelle's name, Vincent realized his mistake. But he couldn't think of a good excuse on the spot, so he abruptly ended the call with, "Forget it." Vincent says he doesn't even remember why he made such a clumsy excuse. He quickly contacted Hilda, and when she arrived at the hospital, Vincent left the room. He was wary that I might hear the news somewhere and visit the hospital. But as he approached home, he couldn't think of a good way to explain it to me, so he stayed in a business hotel that night, citing work as the reason. What's done is done. I've decided. I'm going to marry Hilda. Thank you, Vincent. I'm happy too. I was too stunned to say anything.
Is that truly how you feel?
Hilton asked in a low voice, tinged with anger.
Yes, I've made up my mind.
Since our affair has been exposed, there's no need to meet in secret anymore, so I'm going to think positively.
Don't think you both can get away with this. If you're serious, we have our plans too.
I exchanged a look with Hilton, and he nodded firmly, understanding my intent.
Yes, I'll fight this with everything I've got. I have a friend from college who's a lawyer. I'll consult with him. Do as you please. Our love won't change.
He brazenly pulled Hilda's shoulder close. I waited for Michelle to return and stayed in a hotel that night. The next day, I took Michelle to my parents' house until the divorce was finalized. At first, Michelle was happy, saying,
I can play with Grandpa and Grandma.
But when she realized she couldn't see Vincent, she lost her cheerfulness. Later, Vincent and I finalized our divorce. With the help of the lawyer Hilton introduced, I secured alimony and child support from Vincent. At the same time, Hilton and Hilda also finalized their divorce, receiving similar settlements. Even in such a predicament,
I can be with my beloved Hilda. I'll cover the alimony and child support.
He proudly said. Can't I live with Dad anymore? Michelle cried every night, missing his dad. I'm sorry, Michelle. All I could do was hold her close and comfort her. After the divorce, I moved with Michelle into a small apartment, and Hilda moved into Vincent's house. Though they initially rejoiced, thinking they could be together without any worries, Vincent's parents and Hilda's parents didn't approve of their relationship. My usually mild-mannered father-in-law became so enraged that he declared he was cutting ties with him. It was only natural, given that he had betrayed his beloved granddaughter in the worst way. Still, Vincent and Hilda lived without concern for a few weeks, but rumors of their affair quickly spread throughout the town. Wherever they went, they heard voices of contempt directed at them, and eventually, they had to leave town in less than 3 months. I heard that he was feeling quite awkward at work because of the rumors about his affair. However, since they were no longer part of my life, their fate was no concern of mine. I focused more than ever on my part-time jobs to raise Michelle. I had no time to look back on the past. Occasionally, Hilton would come by to check on us, bringing Michaela along.
Here's a souvenir from my recent business trip.
Such fancy tea. Thank you, as always. After the accident, Michaela became afraid to ride a bike and stopped riding altogether. Still, she and Michelle played card games together in the room, just like before.
Kids are much stronger than we adults think.
I've decided to protect her smile no matter what happens.
I feel the same way,
he said with a bright, charming smile. Many years passed, and Michelle and Michaela grew into beautiful young women, fell in love, and got married.
Mom, I'm home.
During summer vacation, Michelle visited my apartment, carrying her newborn daughter. Next to her, Michaela was holding her own baby girl. We ran into each other at the bus terminal. We didn't realize we were on the same Amtrak.
It's incredible how close you two are, getting married and having babies around the same time.
I couldn't help but burst into laughter. The babies in their arms laughed along with me. One evening, my son Polly, his wife Rachel, and I had a conversation.
Please start saving some money and make plans to move out.
The couple had suddenly moved into my house one day and had a habit of spending recklessly. As soon as I said that, the two of them turned pale and confronted me.
Why do we have to leave?
And
you said we could stay here.
They started yelling various things.
You don't help with housework, and you keep asking for money. You need to become independent already.
Perhaps my words hit a nerve, as Rachel's eyes widened in anger and her face turned red.
Get out, you parasitic pensioner!
She grabbed a lottery ticket from her bag and threw it at me.
Annoying mother-in-law. Here's a lottery ticket for you as a parting gift. Now get lost.
The lottery tickets they bought never won anything. They were practically trash, but if I didn't pick them up, they'd be scattered all over the place forever. As I was diligently picking them up, Rachel watched me with a mocking laugh. However, a few days later, I found myself heading to the bank where Rachel worked with one of those lottery tickets. My name is Belinda. I am now 64 years old. My name is somewhat unusual, and people often asked about its pronunciation. This often served as an icebreaker with classmates and friends. During my last summer as a college student,
I can't figure out how to pronounce your name. Can you tell me?
Someone approached me and said. He was a small, curly-haired boy. By the time we were in college, most people got it right, but he still made a point of asking.
Belinda.
I wrote it down in large letters on my notebook. I meant to be a little mean. But he smiled happily and said my name over and over again. I never imagined that I would start living with him after graduation and eventually marry him. Fate works in mysterious ways. For several years after our marriage, we were not blessed with children, but we spent those years leisurely together. Then we had our son Polly, and the following year our daughter Sissy, making our family lively and bustling. I thought we would spend our days as a family of 4. Thinking about my children and husband every day, I was convinced the years would fly by in no time. I never doubted it until my husband Dylan had a car accident. That morning, Dylan, with his usual smile, said to me, Polly, and Sissy,
I'm off, see you later,
and went out. We all thought he would come back as usual. However, on his way home, he was hit by a car driven by someone who had been drinking. According to the police, the driver had relaxed because it was the weekend and had a drink before heading home. Such excuses didn't matter. I just wanted Dylan back. I wanted him to come home safely. I would never see Dylan smile again. Still, I had to decide to raise my young children on my own. While working as a contract employee, I also struggled to manage housework and childcare. Polly and Sissy grew up without any major injuries or illnesses, progressing smoothly through elementary, middle, and high school. As they grew and became more independent, I felt both sadness and joy. Mom, when I grow up, I'll make sure you can take it easy. Polly always said that on my birthday.
Thank you. But don't worry too much about me. What are you talking about? You've raised us all by yourself. Let me repay you. Oh, really, it's fine.
It's an unforgettable memory of when the 3 of us gathered modestly around a small whole cake. Eventually, the 2 graduated from college and got jobs. Polly got a job offer from a trading company, and Sissy started working as a programmer. Looking back, it all happened in the blink of an eye. Life has somehow already reached its midpoint.
Well. Looks like I'll be living alone now.
In the suddenly quiet house after the 2 left, I made myself some coffee and took a moment to relax. One year-end, Polly came home with a woman. She had a strikingly beautiful face. I was surprised. I invited the 2 into the living room to hear their story.
Nice to meet you. My name is Rachel. I'm dating Polly.
Oh my. I didn't know Polly had such a lovely girlfriend. Where did you 2 meet?
Rachel works at a bank. It's the bank that deals with my trading company. That's how we met.
You work at a bank? That's very respectable.
Not really.
She smiled softly like a flower.
Mom, I plan to marry this woman, Rachel.
Blushing from his face to his ears, he confessed. I saw his father in him and smiled.
Polly, you really are just like your father. What? He also blushed like that when he proposed to me. Really? Yes. Rachel, please take good care of Polly.
Likewise, I am happy to be your family. She also blushed shyly and said. Watching the two of them, so young and innocent, I blessed them warmly. After they had their wedding, I noticed that Rachel's behavior started to change. When they occasionally visited together, she would act coldly or ignore me.
Rachel, could you help with dinner? I'm busy right now,
She said sharply, even though she was just looking at her phone. When Sissy came home after a long time, Rachel was also harsh to her.
So, Sissy, you're a programmer?
Huh? Yeah.
Isn't that a really boring job? But it's very fulfilling. Well, it's fine, but Sissy, you're so plain that I feel embarrassed to tell my friends about you,
Rachel said while looking at her well-manicured nails. Then she glanced at Sissy's hands. Sissy kept her nails short, but they were rough and dry, some even cracked. Noticing this, Sissy hid her hands, feeling embarrassed. She glared at Rachel with a sullen face, but Rachel remained indifferent. Rachel continued to work after getting married. As a bank employee, she probably took care of her hands for the job. However, calling Sissy plain or embarrassing seemed unfair. After Polly and Rachel left, Sissy and I talked over drinks.
Mom, was Rachel always like that? I thought she was really nice when we first met.
Had something happened to change her? Or had she been hiding her true self? Either way, I found it hard to deal with her, and I didn't want to live together and have a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict. But around late summer, Polly started saying he wanted to live in my house, which is under my name. I know it's a lot to ask, but we really want to live here.
You were renting an apartment, right? What are you going to do about that?
The renewal process didn't go through in time. Rachel forgot about it, so we have to move out.
Is Rachel okay with moving in with me? What about her commute? I've told her everything. She's fine with it and will take the bus from here.
I see. It's all so sudden, so I'm a bit worried.
Please! I'll contribute to the household expenses.
After many discussions, I decided to let them move in with me. They should help out with some of the housework, right? I thought about that while tidying up the room, waiting for them to move in. However, once they moved in, neither Polly nor Rachel did anything. They left everything to me, saying they were too busy with work.
I understand Polly works late, but Rachel, you come home on time, right? You could at least help with dinner. Belinda, I'm tired when I get home. I need you to take care of that.
She pouted, her lips pursed. It seemed Rachel never intended to do anything from the start. Even when I asked Polly to tell her to help, she would complain while standing in the kitchen. But that was still better. Eventually, Polly started siding with Rachel.
Rachel, can you do the shopping today?
I asked her on a day off, and she looked annoyed. Seeing this, Polly stepped in between us and glared at me.
Mom, isn't that a bit harsh? Making Rachel do the shopping. No, it's not. I just ask her to cook dinner a few times a week or clean the bathroom. That's not true. I heard you've been making her redo the cleaning out of spite. I never said that. Belinda, you're a liar. Just the other day, you kept nagging me to clean properly. Nagging.
From then on, it became a back and forth of accusations. Polly had been fed a lot of negative things about me from Rachel. Given his tendency to side with the stronger personality, his attitude towards me worsened. Sissy tried to talk to them on my behalf, but it was no use.
Why should I listen to Sissy? It's laughable. You've always been so bossy for a little sister.
They wouldn't listen to reason. Sissy and I were at our wits' end. To make matters worse, they had a habit of overspending. They bought things they didn't need, maxing out their credit cards each month. They also loved eating out, often going to expensive restaurants and drinking. They even resorted to installment payments, and their debt kept growing. Mom, I'm sorry. Could you cover this just once? All right, just this once. They asked so earnestly, I couldn't refuse and covered their expenses. This became a habit, and they repeatedly asked me to cover their bills. Polly and Rachel started to rely on my money, spending without limits. I had to put a stop to it.
You two are spending too much. I'm not covering your bills anymore. Manage your own money.
Belinda, that's not fair. We contribute to the household expenses too. That's just basic responsibility.
Mom, you're being too strict. No, I've been too lenient.
I said it firmly. Their spending habits are intolerable. Then the two of them sighed in annoyance and left the room irritably. In the house they left. This is troublesome. I muttered to myself. This happened about 3 times, and no matter how much we talked or warned them, they didn't listen. Polly and Rachel often bought lottery tickets. Even if they lost, they kept buying, hoping for a big win they couldn't afford. They say you can't win if you don't buy, but in reality, you're more likely to lose even if you buy. I noticed that the trash bin was filled with losing lottery tickets. One night, I had a talk with Polly and Rachel. Why don't you save money properly instead of aiming for a big win with the lottery? That again? We are saving money, right, Rachel? Of course. Rachel said proudly, flaring her nostrils. But you're buying so many lottery tickets? I pointed to the losing tickets in the trash bin with my chin.
Now's the big chance. If we win, we'll be rich.
As I opened my mouth to argue, Polly quickly interrupted. Getting rich without working is a dream come true, right? You haven't even won $1 so far, have you?
But if we win, we can make Mom's life easier, so cut us some slack.
There's no way to rely on the if we win scenario.
Then what should we do?
Save some money and plan to move out of this house. As soon as I said that, the two of them came at me, their faces changing color.
Why do we have to move out?
And
you said you'd let us live here.
They shouted in various ways.
You don't help with housework and keep demanding money. You need to become independent. How dare you talk like that?
Rachel, apparently offended by my words, shouted with her eyes glaring and her face red.
Get out, you freeloading old woman!
She grabbed a handful of lottery tickets from her bag and threw them at me. Steam was practically rising from her head in her fury. I looked at Rachel, Polly, and the lottery tickets scattered on the floor. I was surprisingly calm, thinking that it would be up to me to clean up those lottery tickets.
You noisy mother-in-law! Here's some lottery tickets as a parting gift. Now get out. What? I said, that's your living expenses from now on. Got it. Mom, I've had enough too. I want to cut ties. Cut ties? Why?
Can't you understand? How it feels to have a parent like you. You always lecture us in detail. Isn't that overprotective? I looked at their faces alternately, feeling an indescribable mix of sadness and frustration. They really want to kick me out. To treat me so harshly means that's how they truly feel. I dropped my shoulders and said, Fine. I'll pack my things and leave soon. I'll take these lottery tickets as a parting gift. Even though they're just trash, if I don't clean them up, they'll remain scattered here forever. Although I'm handing the house over to them, it's still in my name. Whether they are losing tickets or not, I have to clean them up. Rachel watched with amusement as I picked them up diligently. After packing my things, I explained the situation to Sissy and decided to live with her. Sissy is already married and lives in an apartment with her husband Ethan. I took a bottle of good, slightly expensive liquor and handed it to Sissy.
Polly is so cruel.
Sissy poured herself a drink, downing it quickly and venting her frustrations. Sissy, angry on my behalf, was drunk and began complaining about Polly and Rachel.
Giving a lottery ticket as a farewell gift? That's ridiculous. I'm so tired of the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflict.
I sighed, looking at the lottery ticket in my hand. Have you checked the winning numbers? Now that she mentioned it, I hadn't had the time to think about it with all the packing and moving. Sissy leaned in to look at the ticket.
Can't you check this online? But they're probably all losers. It's fine, no need to check. Mom!
She set her glass down with a thud and looked at me with bleary eyes.
You should always check these things, just in case.
Do you think so?
Absolutely. It'd be frustrating to think we had nothing. Even if it's just $1 or $2 or 100 million, a win is a win.
Pressed by my daughter's insistence, I borrowed her laptop to check.
Which one should I look at? This one, I think.
When she pointed at the button labeled Check Winning Numbers, a list of lottery names appeared. I searched through the various names to find the one that matched my ticket. Finally finding it, I began comparing each number on the screen with those on my ticket. The text is so small. With Sissy reading out the numbers, I went back and forth between the screen and my ticket for about an hour. So far, no winners, and I was beginning to feel resigned. But as I picked up the last ticket, I thought I recognized the number. Wait, is this? Sissy noticed too. The number seemed to match the top prize. I must have memorized it from looking at the screen so many times.
It can't be. I must be mistaken.
I checked the screen and my ticket again. But no matter how many times I looked, the numbers matched. And the top prize was $9 million. I was speechless, almost falling off my chair.
$9 million? How much is that? $9 million?
Sissy's eyes widened, her drunkenness replaced by shock. Ethan came rushing in to see what was going on. The three of us checked and rechecked countless times. It was definitely a winning ticket. The reality was so surreal that we pinched our cheeks to make sure we weren't dreaming. Apparently, it wasn't a dream.
Polly and Rachel must not have checked it. They were probably too distracted by arguing with me.
With the winning ticket in hand, I decided to go to the bank the next day. The nearest bank to Sissy's house was the one where Rachel worked. I wasn't thrilled about it, but the other options were too far away. Determined to get it over with quickly, I walked into the bank. Rachel stood at the counter with a smug look on her face. When she saw me, she briefly scowled and clicked her tongue. There were few other customers, and I was called up immediately after taking a number.
What do you want, Belinda? Here to beg for reconciliation like a parasite?
She laughed mockingly. I showed her the lottery ticket.
I won the lottery. I need to process the claim. A win? One of the tickets you gave me as a farewell gift hit the jackpot. $9 million. I need you to process it.
Belinda, have you finally lost it?
I won't fall for such a lie. It's not a lie. Please check it properly. Even though I know it's a lie.
Rachel took the lottery ticket I showed and went to her boss. A few minutes later, the boss came rushing over in a fluster.
I sincerely apologize for the earlier misunderstanding.
He quickly led me to a room in the back. Seeing this, Rachel's face turned pale, realizing something serious was going on.
What? It was true.
I heard her mutter in disbelief. As we proceeded with the formalities in a separate room, the door suddenly opened. Both the boss and I turned to see who it was, and it was Rachel, storming in.
Give back that lottery ticket. It was originally mine.
She shouted as she grabbed onto me. I was stunned. But, of course, the boss pulled Rachel away from me.
What do you think you're doing? Stop making false accusations. That lottery ticket, I bought it. It's mine. That's my $9 million. But you gave it to me as a farewell gift, didn't you? And considering your poor conduct earlier, you should reflect on your actions.
Rachel, looking both resentful and regretful, shouted something as she was escorted out by other bank staff. In the now quiet room, I finished the formalities. As I was leaving the bank, the boss deeply apologized.
I'm deeply sorry for my subordinate's rudeness. I will make sure she understands her mistake.
Oh, don't worry about it. I hope she improves her attitude a bit. Indeed. Please continue to favor us with your patronage. The boss kept greeting politely until I was out of sight. Due to the large amount, the money transfer to my account would take some time. I considered buying another house with that money and moving there. It's not good to keep relying on Sissy, and it's more than enough for living expenses. I thought about possibly moving to a rural area in another state, and my dreams kept growing. When I got home and was discussing this with Sissy, I received a call on my mobile phone. It was from Polly. I hesitated, sensing something bad. He probably heard about the $9 million win from Rachel and planned to ask me for money. Sissy seemed to think the same and shook her head silently. Don't answer it. Her eyes were telling me that. After a while, the ringing stopped. I thought it was over, but after a few tens of minutes, the phone rang again. I decided to ignore it, but eventually, I answered.
Mom? Hey, did you really win $9 million?
It's true.
So what? That lottery ticket, I bought it. It's not right to take it from me. I deserve the $9 million.
I sighed, knowing it would come to this.
But you gave it to me as a farewell gift, didn't you? It's not right to take away my living expenses. We need living expenses too. And we cut ties already.
What do you want now? Mom, I meant that as a joke.
I don't care. I won't give you the money. After all you've done, a joke isn't going to fix anything. That's not fair, Mom. Are you listening? Mom.
I hung up the call without saying another word. It was the son and his wife who decided to cut ties and kick me out. Answering the phone felt pointless, so I ignored the subsequent calls. I thought they would give up, but a few days later, they showed up at Sissy's house. On the screen of the camera-equipped doorbell, I saw them banging on the door.
Mom, Sissy! Open the door! This is unacceptable. Come out, you thief!
Calling me a thief was incredibly rude. Even though I told them to stop yelling through the doorbell, they just kept getting louder. What should we do? Then Sissy brought her husband Ethan over.
Leave it to Ethan.
What?
Ethan is a lawyer. He's strong in situations like this.
I was skeptical, but Ethan adjusted his round, black-rimmed glasses and said,
Leave it to me.
He went outside. Watching through the doorbell camera, I saw Polly and Rachel yelling. I could hear Ethan's voice responding. Violence is not acceptable. Please leave.
Get out of the way! We need to talk to Mom.
That's not possible. Making a scene will disturb the neighbors.
You're causing this by not bringing Belinda out.
Belinda refuses to come out. Besides, you have no right to take or claim the $9 million prize. You gave up the ticket.
Stop talking nonsense. Yeah, Mom, we know you can hear us. Open up.
If you keep this up, I'll call the police. Ignoring Ethan's warning, the two continued to cause a commotion. When they tried to force the door open, Ethan intervened, and Rachel slapped him. Polly grabbed Ethan by the collar, looking like he was about to punch him. I couldn't take it anymore. I called the police and asked them to come immediately. Sissy also contacted the apartment management office to inform the police. Fortunately, a police station was nearby, and within about 5 minutes, 2 or 3 officers arrived. Polly and Rachel struggled and tried to flee but were quickly subdued. Even then, their shouting continued from beyond the door, gradually fading as they were taken away. The front door opened, and Ethan walked in slowly. His clothes and hair were disheveled, his round glasses almost falling off his face, looking like he had just returned from a battlefield. Despite being a gentle person who disliked violence, he had gone through so much trouble for me. Sissy and I both thanked him profusely. I decided to treat him and Sissy to a fancy dinner soon. As for Polly and Rachel, we heard from the neighbors. Apparently, their relationship started deteriorating the day I claimed the $9 million prize. They argued every night, becoming the talk of the neighborhood. They shouted about how they shouldn't have kicked me out or given up the lottery ticket. They claimed the $9 million should have been theirs. Eventually, they started blaming each other. After being taken by the police, their relationship became even more strained. A few days later, things quieted down, and it turned out they had divorced and were living separately. A moving truck came and took Rachel's belongings away. Polly stayed in the house and frequently came to us. Give me some money. Begging us. Mom, share the money with me. I'm drowning in debt and can't manage anymore. I told you to manage your money, but you didn't listen. Now you have to face the consequences. Don't say that. You've got to be thinking about me, right? Like inheritance or something. There's got to be something, right? There isn't. What? If it's for me or Sissy, I'll use that money without hesitation. But for you, Polly, I won't use it. I've cut ties with you.
Are you still saying that? That was...
And I'll make sure you don't get any inheritance.
What? What do you mean by that?
That's exactly what I mean. So, deal with your debts on your own. Polly left that day, looking utterly dejected. The once confident swagger he had just a few days ago was completely gone. A few days later, he came back, this time deeply apologized.
Mom, please, I beg you.
But I didn't listen to him. I wasn't going to fall for the same trick again and again. I sent him away, telling him never to come back, and I locked the door. Yet, he kept coming back, undeterred, so I decided to buy a new plot of land, build a house, and move in with my daughter and her husband. The new house had enhanced security measures, making it impossible for Polly to easily get inside. As for the house that was in my name, I had it demolished and the land put up for sale. Polly lost his place to stay and, pursued by debt collectors, found it hard to settle down anywhere. It's a problem when you accrue so much debt that you can't live a stable life. And then there's Rachel. I went to the bank for some business and ended up having a conversation with her boss. Apparently, Rachel had been manipulating the bank system to find out my account information and PIN number. When confronted about this suspicious activity, it was discovered she was trying to use my personal information for her own benefit. This led to a major conflict with her boss. Eventually, it became a police matter and she was fired. With a criminal record, finding another job was nearly impossible, and she was left living in poverty, ostracized by neighbors and former colleagues. As for me, I've been enjoying life in my new home, sipping drinks with Sissy in the evenings.
Maybe Polly and the others were just dreaming too big.
Ever since kicking Polly out, I've come to see Sissy as my only child. After being thrown out of my house by Polly and his wife, I felt so alone, thinking there was no one on my side. If Sissy and Ethan hadn't taken me in, I would have ended up homeless on the streets long ago. I can't thank these two enough. I don't intend to rely on the lottery winnings. I'll continue to live a modest and prudent life, just as I always have. But sometimes, I do enjoy having a drink and living a little more luxuriously with Sissy and Ethan. Save up the money again. My husband Ryan's words were the height of selfishness. The savings were meant for our daughter. Absolutely not for him to use as he pleased. So, I'm going to correct this misunderstanding. This will be my final gift and lesson to my soon-to-be ex-husband.
I already got it transferred. $60,000 from your mistress. What?
It's painful to involve my in-laws, but it's necessary to teach Ryan a lesson. They'll have to see this through to the end. My name is Brittany. I recently turned 40. I live with my husband Ryan and our daughter Christiana, who is about to enter high school. Though, lately, there's been a lot of uncertainty surrounding my husband. Ryan and I originally attended the same college. At first, we weren't particularly close. However, as we saw each other in lectures, joined the same clubs, and even ended up working at the same company, we started talking more. As we got to know each other, we grew closer. We both harbored a certain loneliness. Ryan grew up in a strict, traditional household, while I lost my parents early on. We weren't entirely alone. Ryan's parents were strict but not unloving, and I was raised by distant relatives. Still, there was a sense of unfulfillment. We tried to fill that void with our hobbies. Ryan was a car enthusiast, while I loved fantasy romance novels. We found common ground in our interests. As we talked more, we bonded and eventually started dating, leading to our engagement. However, it took some time for his parents to accept our engagement. His family was well off, so they were hesitant about someone like me becoming their daughter-in-law. Especially his father, Charles, who often gave me a disapproving look.
I sympathize with your situation, but that's that.
I still remember him saying that the first time we met. However, over time, our sincere feelings seemed to get through to them, and they eventually accepted our engagement.
We did it! We can finally be married!
Yes. I can still vividly recall the joy of that day. We got married and began a happy life together. Ryan dedicated himself to his job, and I, having retired, took on the role of a housewife. It would have been a happy ending if it had ended there. But life, much like the games I enjoy, has both happy and bad endings. Of course, reality can't be simplified into just luck or misfortune. But at least for me, it wasn't a happily ever after. And the reason was Ryan. A little after our marriage, he received a transfer order from his company, sending him to a different states. After discussing it, we decided to move together. The job promised better pay, which seemed good for our future with children.
I don't think it will change anything.
That was my thought. But in hindsight, I was wrong.
Can we get a new car?
It started just after we moved. Ryan had always loved the used car he bought during his single days. He had bought it without his family's help, determined to get it on his own, even though it wasn't a new car. It was no longer new and had been used on many of our dates. Though I wasn't knowledgeable about cars, I knew it was nearing its end. While it was sad to part with it, it was necessary. Since I nodded, Ryan happily rushed to buy the car. At that moment, my opinion was hardly taken into account. And by opinion, I mean only small suggestions like the color of the car. I didn't want to say anything unnecessary to Ryan, who was so excited to buy a new car for the first time. So I watched Ryan with a wry smile, but in hindsight, I might have felt a sense of discomfort here. Until then, Ryan had never ignored my opinions, always listening to what I had to say. Ryan bought a somewhat flashy-colored and designed compact car. Considering the previous used car had an old, subdued design to avoid his family's comments, it was a big change. Perhaps it was a reflection of his inner self. He had always struggled to distance himself from his hometown where his family lived. However, with the new job transfer that increased the distance, he was freed from his mental shackles. For him, buying the car might have been a final confirmation of this release. Whether consciously or unconsciously, I'm not sure. Anyway, he began to change gradually from there. It was the beginning of a slow descent into being more and more overbearing, something I didn't notice immediately. We used to discuss and decide various things as a couple, but gradually Ryan's decisions started to take precedence and were made without consulting me.
We agreed to replace the microwave next, right? So why did you buy another car without telling me? Well, don't be so uptight. The dealer said now was a good time.
Even when I asked him, slightly troubled, he brushed it off. However, he still had some sense of guilt back then. This visible sense of guilt disappeared after our daughter Christiana was born. I've heard that a husband's perspective and values can change after the birth of a child. But honestly, I couldn't believe how drastically Ryan changed. At first, I thought it was just the stress from his busy work schedule. But it wasn't just that. Even after things calmed down at work, he rarely showed any interest in me. Moreover, he started behaving in a domineering manner towards me.
Why don't you help with the housework anymore? And you said you'd help take care of Christiana.
When we were newly married, Ryan eagerly helped with housework. He laughed, saying that cooperation was the key to a happy marriage, and promised we would continue helping each other after the baby was born. But he dismissed all that as if it never mattered.
I'm busy with work, you know. You handle the house stuff. Don't act all high and mighty when you don't even earn money. If you want to voice your opinion, try earning more than me.
Being a housewife, those words made me feel quite small. So, at first, I tried my best to manage everything on my own, as Ryan said. With Christiana just born, I started working from home, and seeing me comply seemed to satisfy Ryan.
That's the way it should be. That's how it's always been in my family.
His family held on to old-fashioned values despite the changing times. His father, Charles, used to domineer over his mother, Gracie. His once hated such outdated family values. However, as he grew older, he began to justify his own overbearing nature by saying that's how it was at home. Because his family, Charles, and Gracie were like that, he would be too. It's ironic. Being freed from what had always bound me, only to become something similar to what had been restricting me. But honestly, I question if his words are accurate. He seemed entirely unaware of these things and just started living according to his own desires. He was almost completely indifferent to Christiana. He had no idea what her favorite foods were or what interested her, and he didn't try to find out. Because of this, Christiana had given him cold looks from an early stage, but he didn't even notice. Instead, he was obsessed with cars, and whenever he learned about a sale of a car he liked, he would find some excuse to buy it.
Shut up. It's my money, and I'll spend it however I want.
When he made his third purchase, I finally told him it was too much, but he just said that and wouldn't listen.
But if this continues, we'll have a hard time living. If it's tough, then figure it out yourself.
Though you probably can't. He started to find my presence annoying, and gradually spent less time at home. Even so, things were still better a few years ago. Even though our life was in chaos, he didn't touch the account meant for Christiana's future. However, that was probably just a matter of time. Feeling the urgency, I continued working in my own way to supplement our household and savings. But that didn't solve the financial problems. As we were living, he crossed the final line.
Can you explain what's going on? Oh, what about? You withdrew money from Christiana's account, didn't you?
It was an account for Christiana's tuition, combined with the savings from when I worked at the same company as Ryan. I found out that the money in that account had decreased when I deposited a part of my earnings into it. Since Ryan had the passbook, I couldn't see the detailed statement. However, if the amount on the statement visibly decreases each time it's used, it's obvious. Using our precious money, even just a bit, was undeniably a painful betrayal. But he had crossed another line as well.
What did you use it for? Another car?
Not a car.
Well, it's true that it's getting old, so I want to replace it soon.
Ryan, laughing lightly, no longer had any of the sincerity from when we got married. Feeling sadness and confusion, he then said something even more shocking. A woman.
You no longer have it. What's wrong with seeking attraction in another cute woman? Do you realize what you're saying?
His words openly declared his infidelity. In my stunned state, he shamelessly continued.
I'm telling you I'm cheating. Well, she's the main one now, so it's not really cheating.
Seeing him smile as he spouted nonsensica. Excuses made me unbearably sad. But he didn't notice my sadness. On the contrary, he kept adding words that deepened my feelings.
Just so you know, telling my parents won't help. They'll just laugh it off. How could you say that? Because they come from a time when cheating was a man's privilege.
Does he really think such an old-fashioned notion justifies his infidelity now? He looked proud. And he probably genuinely believed it. Otherwise, he wouldn't brazenly admit his affair to me. Realizing this, my love for him clearly faded. This tendency had been there before, but this obviously foolish act was the final straw.
You'd better be ready for it because I plan to divorce you soon.
As I watched Ryan walk away with that condescending smile on his face, I felt a strong resolve building inside me. I couldn't stay with Ryan any longer. If this continued, it wouldn't just be my life that's ruined, but Christiana's too. I couldn't let that happen. With that thought, I began to take action secretly. At the same time, I decided to ask Christiana directly.
Christiana, what do you think about Dad?
These days, Christiana was trying to focus on her final push towards her high school entrance exams. I felt guilty about distracting her, but if things stayed as they were, the exams and her high school life would be the least of our worries. Feeling sorry for asking, Christiana answered normally.
If you're asking if I hate him, yeah, I hate him. Dad's been cheating, right? You knew?
Surprised, I saw Christiana continue without trying to hide her discontent.
Yeah, I figured. Sometimes I could smell perfume that wasn't yours. I only found out recently, but that's impressive, Christiana.
Mom, you've been busy with work lately, so it can't be helped. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to keep it from you, but it was hard to find the right time to talk about it.
According to Christiana, she planned to tell me when the time was right if I hadn't noticed. But I always seemed so busy, and she couldn't find the right moment to bring it up.
I'm sorry I made you worry. Don't worry about it. So, what are you going to do?
Looking straight into my eyes, Christiana casually said,
If you're going to divorce Dad, I'm all for it. Don't worry about the exams. It might even make me feel better and improve my focus.
Seeing Christiana's smile, I felt relieved. Christiana, who I was most worried about regarding the divorce, seemed to have no problem with it at all. If that's the case, even if we wait a bit longer for the right time, the divorce itself isn't an issue. The problem would be who between Ryan and I would take control. Even Ryan would want to handle the divorce in a way that's advantageous to him. While I was thinking about that, time passed, and Christiana finished her high school exams and passed them successfully. When I informed Ryan, he surprisingly smiled happily about Christiana.
In that case, we should let Dad and Mom know and celebrate.
His words and expression seemed out of character for someone who had recently threatened me with divorce. Though I found it odd, there was nothing in his words to deny. So, I vaguely nodded, and a week later, we ended up having a small celebration party at his parents' house. It was more like a light meal gathering than a party. Ryan's parents were not as strict with Christiana as we were, and their relationship was more relaxed. Maybe because of that, even though Christiana was hesitant about Ryan's suggestion, she was looking forward to meeting her grandparents and the party. But I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. Without any clear answers, the day arrived quickly. With mixed feelings, Christiana and I got into Ryan's car. Ryan, on the other hand, seemed in an unusually good mood. With that ambiguous atmosphere, we drove for about an hour and arrived at his parents' house. Glad you could make it. Today is a celebration. Eat as much as you want.
Wow, this is amazing.
In the spacious living room we were shown into, various dishes, starting with steak, were lined up. Among them were items like pizza that I doubt Ryan's parents particularly liked, probably for Christiana's sake. Just from that, I felt a glimpse into the strict thoughts of my in-laws. It was when I was about to thank them for their kindness.
There's something I want to talk about before dinner, is that okay?
Ryan said this while looking around at us.
Make it short.
We were a bit confused, but Charles answered calmly and gently. Gracie, standing beside Charles, nodded slightly. Confirming this, Ryan's smiling expression tightened a bit as he raised his voice.
Since Christiana passed safely, I've been holding back, but I can't take it anymore, Brittany. I want a divorce.
What? Ryan declared to my bewilderment.
Listen, Dad, Mom. Brittany has been withdrawing money from Christiana's account and using it.
The statement was sudden and baffling. Rather, it's Ryan who's been embezzling the money. While I was taken aback, Ryan presented the bank statement to my in-laws as evidence.
Wait a minute. Ryan has always had the banking card. Panicking and lying won't help. The problem is that the money has been moved. It's terrible, isn't it? Almost draining the account meant for your daughter.
I felt a bit like holding my head in my hands. So, this was the purpose of suggesting today's party. The statement only recorded the withdrawals, not who made them. Logically, if it's between the son and the daughter-in-law, the son would be trusted. Ryan's plan was to make me the villain, divorce, take alimony through the divorce court, and then remarry his mistress. While my in-laws stared grimly at the statement, Ryan moved close to me and whispered in my ear.
I used the account money to buy a new car.
He was confident my words wouldn't be believed no matter how much I claimed otherwise. Ryan continued speaking with a smug smile.
You can save up the money again.
His face showed complete confidence in his victory. But whether he could keep that face until the end was still unknown.
By the way, there's something I want to ask you.
What?
When is the last date on that bank statement?
Ryan briefly looked puzzled at my question. But he probably thought it was just a pathetic attempt to save face.
A week ago? Oh, was there a paycheck or something? It must be small. You need to save up again, right, for the tuition?
Ryan laughed at me again. But hearing that, I was sure of our victory. So, after nodding to Christiana, who was anxiously watching, I said loudly. Loud enough for everyone present to hear.
I already received the money. $60,000 from your mistress. If you don't believe me, you can check right now.
What? Charles, who had just finished checking the statement, seemed to lose his words at my unexpected remark. For a moment, his mouth was agape in shock. Gracie and Ryan were the same. But quickly regaining his composure, Charles asked me,
Could you explain what you mean?
Understood.
She's Ryan's mistress.
She's not here now, but we've already concluded our discussions.
What?
Ryan, who had seemed so confident a moment ago, now looked utterly shocked.
What are you saying? No, what do you mean the conversation is already over? I mean exactly what I said. The discussion with Brianna Girton is finished.
After making up my mind, I hired a private investigator to thoroughly investigate Ryan's surroundings. As a result, I have a pretty good understanding of the other woman's identity, position, and other details. I mean, it's ridiculous for him to think I wouldn't find out when he mentioned the other woman himself. Well, that shows just how much he underestimated me. Maybe he thought I wouldn't leave him because he was the main breadwinner. Either way, it was a thought born out of his contempt for me.
Brianna Girton, 29 years old. She works as an office worker. She's a clerk at a company that deals with him.
I started to share the information about Brianna Girton. Ryan, in his shock, could only move his mouth like a fish out of water. Not wanting to be interrupted, I pressed on with my story.
Your mistress said she was attracted to you because of your generosity. Isn't that the same as saying she's after your money? Isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Christiana laughed, and I joined in with a smile. Ryan must have realized it was a provocation because he began to tremble with anger. Ignoring his reaction, I continued speaking.
And because you were so generous, she wanted to keep seeing him and take as much money as she could. She even talked about wanting to marry him for that reason. That's ridiculous.
Ryan finally voiced his objection.
That's not true. Brianna isn't like that.
Oh? Then what kind of person is she?
Brianna admired my personality and work ethic. She said she liked how serious I was.
Serious? Yeah, right. I almost burst out laughing.
What's so funny?
A serious person wouldn't cheat. I nearly laughed out loud at such an obvious fact. Christiana seemed to feel the same way, covering her mouth and shaking with suppressed laughter. But the conversation wasn't over yet. With Charles watching, I managed to hold back the urge to laugh.
Unfortunately, Brianna isn't the person you think she is. What are you basing that on?
Ryan was almost shouting in his indignation. It seemed like he was really into her. But it would never work out. Because
when I mentioned going to court and demanding compensation, she immediately cut you off. What?
Ryan exclaimed in disbelief when I told him. But facts are facts. Brianna had indeed abandoned Ryan. She begged me not to go to court, saying she'd do anything, cooperate fully, just to avoid it. So I agreed to settle without going to court and get compensation from her. Brianna really wanted to avoid a court battle. I got her to agree to pay a higher than usual $60,000 and to fully cooperate in my favor during the divorce proceedings with Ryan.
It's not true.
It's true. She told me everything. How you met, the hotels you used, when and how often you saw each other. Ryan must have realized what my words meant. The color drained from his face. Glancing at him, I checked the notebook where I had written down the information from Brianna. It was clear that something was wrong with Ryan, so it was wise to be prepared. Charles, wasn't there about $2,000 withdrawn around November last year? I directed my question to Charles, who was holding the statement. Charles, watching the situation with a slightly stern face, calmly checked his computer. Eventually, he reached the relevant page and furrowed his brow deeper. Indeed, it seems to have been withdrawn. What was it used for? A designer handbag. The latest model this year or something. I'm not really familiar with these things, though. As I said this, I mentioned the time when Christiana's account started being used for Brianna's gifts. The amounts varied a bit, but they generally matched.
Well, that's how it is. In other words, his claim that I misappropriated the account money is a lie.
Shrugging as I said this, Ryan raised his voice in anger.
What does that prove? Just because the amounts match doesn't mean anything.
By that logic, your claim that Mom used the money is the same. Christiana pointed out, maintaining her composure unlike Ryan. Showing only the withdrawn amounts and saying you spent it isn't usually enough, is it? Dad, it seems like you were trying to cover up with bluster. Christiana's words were valid. If you think about it calmly, they couldn't pin the blame on me with just the statement. If reported to the police and investigated thoroughly, overturning it should be easy. If they checked the bank withdrawals, that should be enough. However, he had completely underestimated me. He was convinced that I wouldn't and couldn't go that far. He thought he had an overwhelming advantage, and I would just quietly comply. But, by using money intended for Christiana, my stance had changed. I wasn't going to hesitate to take action for my precious daughter. If that alone isn't enough proof, there are other pieces of evidence. As I said this, I took out some of the evidence I had brought from my bag. I don't really want to show you this, but it's proof of Ryan's affair with Brianna. The photos gathered by the detective showed them on dates, entering and leaving hotels, kissing. All sufficient evidence of the affair. As I was about to hand the stack of photos to Charles.
What does this mean?
Ryan shouted, snatching the evidence from my hand. In the next moment, he began tearing them apart. I think it's questionable to try and destroy evidence while saying what does it mean. After a small sigh, I turned to Ryan. He was so agitated that he was breathing heavily.
Shut up!
Besides, there are plenty more pieces of evidence.
Shut up, I said! Who cares about the affair?
Interrupting me, Ryan's words were anachronistic and out of touch with modern values.
A woman should just support her husband without saying anything.
Ugh, you're the worst. Christiana muttered quietly, but with deep disgust. Even his own child's words didn't seem to reach him. His face twisted with anger as he raised his voice even more.
You wouldn't have even noticed the affair if I hadn't mentioned it. I'm the one putting food on the table for you all. Right, Dad?
And those words were directed at Ryan's father.
Dad, I finally understand your feelings. It's only natural to be strict with Mom. If you don't discipline her properly, she won't understand my greatness.
Ryan had a creepy smile on his face. It was unclear if he was aware of it. Honestly, I wanted to show him a mirror. But Ryan continued speaking as if he were on top of the world.
Dad would understand. Making a fuss over just an affair. Affairs are a man's privilege.
However, his tone didn't last long. A sharp sound echoed. It was none other than Charles who slapped Ryan across the cheek.
Dad, what?
Ryan, in pain, rubbed his cheek and looked at Charles again. Then he finally realized. Charles had a furious expression on his face.
What do you understand? Is that how you've seen me? You idiot. But Dad, I always thought you were like that. Enough with your nonsense.
At Charles's angry voice, he screamed again. Gracie watched the two of them with sad eyes.
Sure, my words and expressions towards Mom and you might have been harsh. Then. But I never once intended to make her or you sad.
Ryan seemed genuinely frightened by his stern gaze. Even from this scene alone, it was clear. Charles had never truly directed his anger at Ryan or Gracie before. So, Ryan was confused and scared by this first-time experience. Gracie, on the other hand, just looked sad. Before getting married, I heard stories about Ryan's parents and vaguely imagined them as unreasonable and nitpicking. But after meeting them several times, I realized I was wrong. Their words and gazes were harsh, but they made sense. If they just wanted to impose unreasonable things, their attitude wouldn't soften. Their concern about the family background of Ryan's partner was also out of worry for him. You could call it old-fashioned, but it's true that it's reassuring to have someone with a clear background. If they were truly overly strict, I don't think their relationship would have lasted this long. Of course, there are people in the world who impose relationships where you have no choice but to obey. But the looks Ryan's parents exchanged sometimes never felt like that. So he probably only saw things from his convenient perspective. A reason to rebel against a strict family, a reason to get close to me, he probably portrayed his parents' relationship and education worse than they were. This wasn't just limited to his parents, but also towards me, Christiana, and Brianna as well. He only saw things in a way that suited him. That was Ryan's true nature. His parents probably understood that. That's why they raised him strictly. But after being away from his parents, there was nothing to stop him.
And affairs are a man's privilege? Nonsense. Someone who cheats can't be right.
That's just a straightforward, undeniable fact. It should be easy to understand, regardless of a strict family. He ignored that obvious truth with convenient excuses. Faced with the undeniable truth, he let out a foolish groan.
I am deeply sorry for what my son has done. It is truly unforgivable.
Charles, after apologizing to me deeply, stated firmly.
Being with someone like him is just a waste of your time. Please separate and live a new life. We will make sure you receive alimony, and you will get a favorable division of property. What? Charles, are you sure about this?
I'm sure as parents, they would have wanted to side with Ryan. Of course, that would be problematic, but it's understandable as a parent's instinct. To my question, Charles nodded deeply. Seeing this, Gracie, who had remained silent until now, began to speak.
Brittany, you are truly a kind person. You don't have to forgive such a fool who deceived someone as kind as you. He has completely crossed our limit earlier. Gracie, thank you. You don't need to thank us. Rather, we are the ones who should apologize. It is disgraceful to have raised such a foolish child,
Gracie said, her eyes slightly moist. His actions had exceeded the limits of parental tolerance. It is his responsibility for his selfish behavior, but my heart aches for his parents. Christiana also looked sadly at her grandparents. Despite that,
Don't be ridiculous. This can't be allowed.
only Ryan, who couldn't grasp the reality, kept making a fuss. Even Charles was looking at him with a fed-up expression, and Christiana was looking at him as if he were trash.
The one who is not forgiven is you, Ryan. And even if we do nothing, the outcome won't change.
There is a mountain of evidence of the affair, and the mistress would testify to reduce alimony. Even if we go to court, there is no element for him to win. With the cooperation of his parents, it would be even more so. Whether he didn't understand this, or if he had some trick up his sleeve, he was smiling with a twisted face.
Yeah, the outcome won't change. Because, you see, Brittany, you can't live on your income alone. You have to rely on me.
No, didn't I say that Brianna transferred the money earlier?
That's a lie. It can't be. Even if that's true, Christiana's high school and college tuition will eat it up.
What Ryan said, shaking his head like a child throwing a tantrum, was just wishful thinking for him. To correct him, I said, "Sorry, but that's just your wishful thinking, Ryan. I can live with Christiana just fine now." I took out my personal bank statement from my bag and opened it to show him. Seeing it, Ryan let out a foolish voice.
What? How did you earn that much while staying at home?
The statement showed nearly $100,000 in savings. Looking at the stunned Ryan, I said as if it was nothing. There are quite a few jobs you can do from home. In my case, I'm a writer.
A writer?
Dad, of course, you wouldn't know since you never cared, but Mom was working a lot. While staying at home, I had been taking various writing assignments online in my spare time. Ryan, you always said, don't interfere with the money I earned, handle it yourself. So, I tried my best. Though at first, I was at a loss as to what to do. So, I decided to start with something I liked, and I arrived at writing, especially storytelling. Of course, it didn't go smoothly from the start. I started my writing career back when there wasn't a proper system for receiving orders online like there is now. Even after repeatedly submitting to magazines, I saw no results and faced many failures. There were many days when I couldn't find any orders, and even when I did, they weren't accepted. However, by steadily continuing my efforts day by day, I began to receive recognition and good reputation spread.
Now, Mom even takes on game scenario requests. Famous works that even I know about.
Recently, I had even started getting big requests like that. Even so, I have to admit that my income is still unstable. But I feel confident in my current work, so I think a little more time is all I need. And I can cover that with the savings I've accumulated so far. By the way, what I've been depositing into our joint account is only a part of my total income. As his true nature became apparent, I felt it was risky to deposit the full amount, hence my decision. In fact, since Ryan was using it recklessly, I can say that decision was correct. That's why we don't need your help anymore. We'll gladly take the compensation and child support from the divorce trial, though.
Lies. Lies, that can't be true. Does that mean I have no place anymore?
Ryan, apparently shocked, muttered in a daze. But suddenly, he lifted his head and shouted with bloodshot eyes.
That's right. It's a lie. Brianna won't abandon me. It must all be your lies. I am needed.
After glaring at all of us, he stormed out of the room. He ran away like a rabbit, as the expression goes.
Will he be okay?
Christiana's okay was more about whether he would cause trouble for anyone rather than his safety. But chasing after him now wouldn't likely catch him. So, we had no choice but to leave him be for a while.
If it comes to it, I'll bring him back, so don't worry.
Charles's words, thoughtfully considering our intentions, gave us relief. So our current concern is.
However, it's troublesome. I didn't expect this to happen, so I might have ordered too much.
Yes, it was about what to do with the large amount of food left here. Christiana and I exchanged glances and, smiling wryly, thanked our parents-in-law together. Then an unexpected turn of events occurred. First, Brianna, who had been Ryan's affair partner, was arrested by the police. I had been wondering. She had easily transferred a large amount of alimony. I thought her family must be quite wealthy, but if that were the case, she wouldn't have cozied up to him in the first place. The trick was, she was actually a kind of con artist. Just like with Ryan, she cozied up to many men and extracted money from them, accumulating a considerable amount. One of the men noticed this and reported her to the police, leading to her arrest. So, what happened to Ryan, who sought refuge with Brianna? With her arrest, that became impossible, and he was found in a daze by Charles, who restrained him. However, driven into a corner, he turned to us.
I was wrong. So, let's start over again.
Of course, I had no intention of accepting such a convenient story. So, I told Charles that he had called both Christiana and me. Then, Charles got furious once again. In a situation with no escape, he thoroughly lashed out at Ryan like never before. As a result, Ryan agreed to our divorce. He promised to pay alimony and child support through the divorce proceedings and accepted the property division in a way that wasn't unfavorable to us. Currently, he is staying with his in-laws, who decided to straighten him out. It means he has to wake up very early since his in-laws' house is far from the office. Moreover, the news of our divorce had already spread in the company. Probably because I used to work there. A colleague who noticed something was off with he contacted me, knowing I was once his coworker and now his ex-wife, to ask about the situation. Naturally, they didn't want to be caught up in his mistakes. I had no reason to hide anything, so I told them everything. The information I provided quickly circulated throughout the company. Ryan, knowing that everyone was aware of the situation, found himself surrounded by cold stares, feeling like he was on a bed of nails. The daily stress has caused him to become very gaunt. As for us, without the source of stress that Ryan represented, we were living comfortably. Christiana had recently started high school. I was worried that our divorce might have a lasting impact on her.
No way,
she said cheerfully with a bright smile. As long as it doesn't affect her, that's all that matters. At that time, a game scenario I had written received exceptionally high praise, leading to an influx of requests. I can't accept all the requests, so I am carefully reviewing each one. This must be what they call a happy dilemma. If this experience can be of any reference in the future, that would be great, but the story is a bit outrageous, so it seems difficult. Still, if the opportunity arises someday, it might not be a bad idea to compile the story somehow. Although it's an unpleasant memory, it's undeniable that the event is part of our history. To prevent others from interpreting it in their own convenient way like Ryan did, there is value in writing it down. So that I won't struggle when the time comes, I will start jotting down bits and pieces of that time. I thought it would be nice if one day I could read it together with my daughter and laugh about it.